Well, a new report is highlighting a dramatic surge in artificial intelligence generated child sexual abuse material in 2025, with cases rising, according to one new study, by more than 26,000%. And joining us now is Donna Hughes of Enough is Enough. Now, Donna, obviously that number alone is staggering and certainly alarming, and we've known that this was a growing issue. CSAM has already been an issue for many years. Enough is Enough has tackled that for a long time.
Yes.
And now with the rise of AI, it's becoming even more of an issue. So just talk a little bit to our audience about the urgency of this problem.
Well, exactly. And I'm so glad you brought up just CSAM in general. And just for your audience, this, what we are referring to as child pornography, we're now calling it child sex abuse material. Why? Because this content is actually the depiction of the abuse and violence against a child. So that's really a key point. And prior to AI, even prior to this year, the cases of the actual abuse of a child, of a real child, was already up sky high, larger than it's ever been in the history of our country since we've been reporting on this. Over 105 million images that were just reported of the abuse of children, some as young as infants and toddlers, only about a year ago. And so now when you add AI to the equation, here's what's really key about this, Trey. In the past, a predator, a trafficker, a pedophile would need to actually abuse a child, then take images or videos of that abuse, and then, of course, they share it, they promote it, they use it to incite other predators to actually act out against a real child, and then this cycle of abuse just continues and continues. Now, with AI, you don't need anything. You don't even need a real child. All you need, you can take a picture, for instance, of anyone's child in a Christmas photo, and you can deep fake it, which means you can actually remove that child's clothes, you can age that child, you can have that child do anything you want it to do sexually with an adult, with another child, with an animal, doesn't matter. And that's what's happening with AI. So the AI generated CSAM has completely blown the lid off this problem.
And, I see this as kind of a huge overarching dark web, that all different pieces of sexualized content on the internet, from pornography with quote unquote consenting adults, which how can you even verify that, right? We don't really have a way of even knowing that, but that is a separate discussion. But I do want to ask you how pornography writ large is funding so much of the CSAM that we see on the internet, and how all of it is actually very interconnected.
Well, I'm so glad that's such a very wise observation, because a lot of people don't understand the connection. So it's what we call a cycle of abuse. So let me just kind of describe this a little bit. When you have hardcore material that's out there, most of the content that's online, when I say hardcore pornography, isn't even protected speech for adults. A lot of this content, about 90-something% of it, depicts some kind of violence against a female. All right. And this type of content actually fuels the desire to act out against a real child or a real woman. And then as that occurs, then you've got more abuse material than surfaces out there. So one fuels the other. The other thing that I think is an important thing to realize is that whether it's the pornography industry, the trafficking industry, the CSAM industry, they're all multi-billion billion-dollar criminal enterprises that we're barely throwing a smidgen of dollars at and trying to fight. And then, of course, now you've got AI and with really no guardrails around AI. And one of the important things that you mentioned about Grok, I mean, this isn't deep web stuff. Grok is Elon Musk's AI generated tool. And this is even happening on the X platform. So even the big tech companies can't control this. Now, I'm not saying they're necessarily being as proactive as they need to be, because they're not. And
Right.
we want them to be, which is why Congress has been stepping up, and we need to get especially some AI legislation passed. There's several bills right now before the Senate, because we've got to put guardrails around this, because it's simply out of control.
Yeah. So talk about, you mentioned guardrails and there not being guardrails in place. What kind of pressure can enough is enough? I want to ask you about legislation in a minute, but first I want to ask you about what kind of pressure is enough encouraging people just in general, right? The power of the purse. We have a lot of sway with what we choose to use and not use. So how can we, just as everyday people, be pushing organizations like Elon Musk's X and Grok and even ChatGPT and all of these other platforms to actually implement content moderation guardrails that are actually adequate to protect us from CSAM and the creation of CSAM?
Yes, and I wouldn't just say CSAM too, just everything, like AI
Sure,
chatbots
absolutely.
that are talking to kids and leading them down into committing suicide. I mean, but you could just go in all these different directions. One I would say is for groups like us, sign up for our emails. They're all free. We're keeping you updated. We have petitions. We have, calls to Congress, calls to action. There are other groups that are doing this. And here's the good news: as there are hundreds of groups that are out there. We're all coalesced together because we have to coalesce together to get Congress to listen. We've got to coalesce together to get big tech to listen and to put the kind of pressure. This is where concerned citizens come in. So if you go to internetsafety101.org or enough.org, you'll see a little box pop up. Just sign up. We'll keep you updated every week as to what we're doing or one of our partners is doing to try to keep that pressure up there. And then in terms of the power of the purse, just really beware. I mean, right now, Enough is Enough and other groups are just saying to parents in general, AI right now is just not safe for kids. I mean, it can be. I hope it will be. Right. But, and if you're going to let your kids use a chat GPT or any other type of companion, be right on top of it, even an older teen. Know what they're doing, keep a close eye on it. Talk to them about how these chatbots can go rogue and everything else. And then parents too, just be really careful about what you're posting, because even an innocent Christmas picture can get turned into a deep fake, just like
Yeah.
this. And then it's all bets are off, and your child is out there. Looks like your child, and it's very hard to tell that it's not really your child doing the things that the deep fake is making it look like that child is doing.
Yeah. Well, you kind of answered my next question by addressing deepfakes. And this might sound like a silly question, Donna, but I think it's so important and one people ask all the time, which is how is the proliferation of AI generated or fake CSAM, child sexual abuse material, how is that actually impacting a real victim when no child is actually being harmed?
It's such a great question, and it's an important one, because here's what we know about the mind of those who abuse children. Whether it's a real child or a fake child, what this does is it fuels their sexual appetite to abuse a child. It does not satisfy, whether it's a real child or a fake child. All it's doing is fueling that desire, so that we already know, and the data and the research shows that when someone uses child abuse material themselves, they get hooked on it, that it increases their desire to act out against a real child. That's just the facts,
Yeah.
right? So it's all fueling it. So it's and we really need Congress to act on this too. And I don't want to go back into some old Supreme Court cases, but there were some where they say, well, it's not a real child, so we're not going to treat it as child pornography. Well, that needs to change now. It needs to
Yeah.
be treated that way, because the impact on the user, the impact on a real child that that user now is going to act out on a real child. And by the way, anytime a predator abuses a real child, they are going to create real CSAM.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Okay, so it all fuels together. So we've got to look at the collective whole and how do we really stop it. And I really think that this White House has an opportunity to prioritize protecting kids on the internet. We are actually pushing the White House to do this and to make this the kind of priority that they're making with fentanyl, the kind of priority that they did with closing the border, because they were concerned about trafficking and what's happening to children. But we need that same kind of tenacity and targeted approach to deal with what's happening online.
Well, you mentioned the Trump administration and the efforts that they've taken in other areas of this issue. So and you mentioned also a few minutes ago about legislation before Congress. So what kind of bills are lawmakers currently considering that you think would be effective at addressing this problem?
Well, yeah, there are several. Your listeners probably aren't going to pay much attention to the names of them, but there's one that just passed the Senate Judiciary that deals with this issue, the Defiance Act. There's another one, and I believe it's the AI Lead Act, but don't quote me on that. But there's another one that I really happen to really love, and this basically says that we're going to treat AI like a product.
Hmm.
So if someone is endangered by a product, just think product, car seat, product, car, anything by the product, then that manufacturer of that product can be held liable. And this is one of the first times we have been able to do this because these AI companies are actually creating product. This is their product. This isn't something that's happening on their service. So I think that's a really important step too, as we're looking at how do we hold these companies accountable.
Yeah. Well, my last question for you, Donna, is just for people who want to get involved, they want to learn more and get access to the information that enough is recording and the data y'all are compiling, all of that information. Where can they go to get that?
Well, I'm going to give you our internetsafety101.org website. We've got two, but internetsafety101.org. And the reason I'm giving you that one is because we deal with every single danger and risk that kids are dealing with online. They're in categories: pornography, CSAM, child sex abuse, trafficking. You can go in there, you can get quick guides, you can watch videos, you can find out exactly what you need to do to protect your kids. That's a very empowering website. So I would go there, and then of course just sign up for our free emails and newsletters and follow us on all of our social media feeds. And I'm at Donna Rice Hughes, and we're also at Enough. I think on Twitter, and you can just follow us around and keep up with what we're doing, and we'll keep you informed. That's our job.
Yeah. Well, Donna Rice Hughes of Enough is Enough. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Trey. Thanks for having me.